Morning, everybody. I'm super excited to welcome Gabe Lulo, CEO of Alley-Oop. Gabe, welcome.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm a huge fan of yours and what you guys do. So I'm really pumped to be here. Thanks for the invite. Let's get started.
Same here. You have an amazing background in sales, and we're chatting a little bit about your journey right before. But I'd love to have you introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, Gabe Lulo. I'm the CEO of Alley-Oop. I started off as an SDR in my career, sales development rep, making hundreds of cold calls, and moved my way to CEO. And it's been a fun, long, amazing journey. And now we have the privilege to be representing our brand, our company, and so many other great clients in the sales development function.
So what's in that name?
Yeah, so it's a basketball term, right? So the alley-oop term in basketball means the ultimate assist. It's that moment in the game where someone throws up the ball perfectly for someone else to come in and slam dunk it. Now that person gets the credit, that person looks cool, that person gets all the recognition. But if it wasn't thrown up perfectly, it would have all not worked out. And so we see that as an analogy to what we do. Our job is to set up those leads, set up those opportunities, set up that pipeline so our clients could come in, close deals, make profits, and generate revenue. So that's how we approach our day every day. And that's the analogy.
There is so much to talk about on that. But before we get going, I'd love to have you kind of set up your own journey. You have had an amazing journey. How did where did you start? How did you get into sales? What led you to this position? So can you walk us through?
Yeah, it's funny. I got these juggling pins and machetes. I talk about this a lot. I used to make money when I was a kid juggling. I just got hooked into this. And I wanted to go to clown school. That's a real story. My mom said absolutely not. And so I realized that, when I was a kid, I was trying to raise money for a fundraiser, and I actually sold a $25 t-shirt to my uncle and made money. And I said, oh my God, I can just talk and make money. This is incredible. Because all my friends and family had to do physical labor to make money. So I wasn't around that. And so I got into sales, built a business in the recruitment space and, did executive recruiting and sales training, and then got a part of Alley-Oop. And the founders and I came together and said, you know what? There's a need in the market. There's a problem that needs to be solved. And that's more leads, more appointments, and less time for AEs to be prospecting all day. And so we doubled down on building out a sales development company. And that's what we've been doing the last 10, 15 years.
That's quite amazing. Who are your customers today?
Yeah. So we have 30% of our business is enterprise. We built sales development teams for ZoomInfo, Amazon Web Services, Ingram Micro, Peloton. And then we have founder-led sales teams that are, working with us where we're actually building out and we're the first person making a call on the product ever. And so we're really industry agnostic. But we specialize in B2B, of course. So as long as there's an appointment or a demo or a discovery call in the sales journey, we can build a sales development team or function around that. And that's how we help our teams go to market.
That's pretty cool. So do you also work with any of these brands that have partnerships, like they sell through resellers or?
Yeah, absolutely. So channel partnerships, resellers, building out a referral program. Those are things that we would absolutely work with our founders or our owners or even our CROs to go out and CMOs to go out and do that. It doesn't have to be just an appointment for a demo, right? We can do even campaigns to existing customers. We can do campaigns for referral partners. We can do events and promote events that they may be attending post event. As long as, someone has to pick up the phone and reach out to somebody to have a business conversation, that's what we specialize in.
I had a podcast with Jason Glass, who is VP of Sales, our partner network, partner sales at Sugar CRM.
Yeah.
And he was going through his own journey over the last 20, 25 years. He said, when I started my career, it was speeds and feeds. You had to really get good at demos and he kind of closed deals. But he traveled in packs, met customers in packs. Then now we're in a Zoom call and you really don't get to build relationship with buyers. And so you have to have real competence in emotional selling, really figure out where their pain points are. And I found that quite fascinating as a journey for him. But talk to me a little bit, Gabe, because you're even a step before that, which is even harder.
Right.
Which is, it's no longer going to trade shows, getting a bunch of names. At least you have some connectivity and coming back and calling them and say, hey, Gabe, I met you at such and such show. I wanted to follow up because you showed interest. Like, how did that game change for you, like in the front end?
Yeah, it was interesting. Our first, rebuttal that we had to get around years and years ago, pre-COVID, of course, was why would I work with a sales partner and have not have our team in office and working alongside of our, sellers all day long? And we got around that a lot because of our way we do business. But then even after COVID, we stopped hearing that. And now we all live in this Zoom world. And you're absolutely right. And now with AI, it's even becoming less face to face and even less human. So we really bring human dynamics back into the sales process because we say back, it's never left us. Last year, we made over 11 million sales calls for our clients. And so having the ability to cut through the noise of overloaded email inboxes right now is really having a resurgence. And it's our way of saying, you know what? We can hopefully solve a problem here. Let's have a conversation around it and let's see if it makes sense to continue the dialogue. And so we are absolutely inserting human, emotion and empathy back into the sales process for sure.
So, we're about 150 people, and we're fully product led company, even though we don't have a free version, freemium version, but we allow people to, try our product and through the sales cycle. We have a very small sales team. We have had 4 false attempts in trying to build an SDR team, and we gave up on it. We're very, very organic and inorganic inbound. Yeah. So what do you think people make mistakes when they're trying to build this team in-house? And how can you help to come in and help organization of our size? I know you work with larger organizations, but companies like of our size.
Yeah, it's the enablement piece where clients of ours come to us and they've tried it a few times. They felt like, they're at the dead end. This is their last try. We got to get it right because we do believe in it. We've seen others do it. What are we missing? And I think people just hire SDRs out of college that are former bartenders like myself and give them a list and give them a pat on the back and let them go at it. And usually they're doing this with a very small team because they're starting it off for the first time, which makes sense. But the problem with all of those things is, one, they don't have the tools, data, and the messaging, and the playbook, and the dialer, and the cadence set up. So there's very little direction. There's high turnover because, again, 2 people making cold calls by themselves at home or in an office is really daunting. And so there's a really big turnover for brand new SDRs, especially if they never did it before. So what we found is that we have a team of 150 sellers on our sales floor. Now they're all branded and working with other clients. So they still get the 2 or 3 people working on that same brand, but they're working also in an ecosystem of over 150 people. And so they get that environment, they get that coaching, they get that training, and it feels like they're literally working on a team or a basketball team, right? And so that's what we find to be the secret sauce, the enablement piece and the culture piece, which is usually hard to build when you're doing it by yourself.
So is your entire team in a floor, or are they some part of it also remote?
Yeah, so we're a fully remote company. We did this pre-COVID, and we do a video floor. So if people don't like being on video, it's actually the first step in our interview process is they have to actually answer 6 questions on video through a recorded software. So it's an async video. They answer questions, and that's their first step in the interview process. We have a video sales floor that everyone is calling into, very similar to a Zoom room, but it's integrated with the dialers. So coaching, high fives, one-on-ones, feedback, making fun of negative, prospects, saying something rude on the phone, and celebrating success is it's happening. We have a 1-to-10 ratio. So we have a sales manager and a 10 reps in that Zoom room, if you will, each and every day.
That's quite fascinating. So talk to us a little bit about, how the SDR world has changed, because we hear now 90% of the buying happens online. People don't want to talk to anybody. In our false attempts, we found out we don't have the direct number post-COVID. Everybody's on their mobile or remote or whatnot. Gateway, is an IVR. So what on your side, what was the world like before COVID and what is it now? And what is your go-to-market approach in that context?
Yeah, you touched on a lot of it, right? So before COVID, office lines was the way to go. Now it's direct dial mobile numbers. Calling someone, before that was like, hey, why are you calling on my cell phone? Now we very rarely get that. Picking up your phone and having a business conversation is happens. We still hear it, but not as much. And working with partners and vendors and mobile data providers is how we are able to enable our reps with the right contact information. Back in the day, email was very, very prominent. Email automation was essentially the way SDRs were operating. With AI, I think it was Henry Schuck that said it on a CEO and founder of ZoomInfo said it. If your SDRs are only sending emails all day long, those days are numbered because AI can just do that these days. So making a phone call and connecting with someone and being authentic. Yes, there's a lot more calls you may have to make. And yes, we can score people who pick up and who don't. But we're also seeing a big resurgence right now in content. I'm seeing SDRs for companies like Apollo and Deal and all these big businesses. And they have 80,000, 90,000 followers on LinkedIn and they're SDRs. So content creation and cold calling is what we're really seeing cut through the noise, and it's being really effective.
That's quite fascinating. So you're saying it's not just SDR. They are becoming kind of influencer in their own segment. They're carrying that halo and that allowing them to connect and reach out.
Yeah. So we have a home team. We drink our own Kool-Aid. So meaning we have our own SDRs calling for our own brand, and we do the same thing we do for our clients. And all of our home team members who are also SDRs are very, very, very focused on being an influencer on LinkedIn. We have SDRs right now have 30, 40,000 followers and they're SDRs on LinkedIn. And they came to us with 400 when they started with us 2 years ago. And so building a brand around them and having them be a thought leader in the space has been able to attract, and it creates trust, right? When you have a phone call and you say, hey, this is Gabe with Alley-Oop, and you may know me because you see my content, it changes the conversation from a cold to a warm call. So we're enabling our SDRs to do that so they can have those types of warm calls as well.
I mean, what kind of content is it? Like lots of selfies and latte shots, or like what are they pushing out there?
Yeah, we do 80-20. 80% very valuable, relevant conversations about our industry, about what we do, about sales development as a space, and then 20% that's personal. Did I post a picture of me and my daughter taking her to school the first day of school this year? Absolutely. But is that something I'm posting every single day like I would on Instagram or Facebook? No. I want people to be real and I want people to be human and know that, hey, there's a real person on the other end. But it's an 80-20 split because this is about business and about being a thought leader.
I had Amelia Taylor, who's a social marketer. She was in a panel in Tampa, and I was kind of chatting with her evolution. She has about, high 30,000 as followers, and she works with brands and partner marketing. And so she said something very interesting, which I found. She said, today, 5 generations show up at work, literally from all the way Gen Z and up. And each and every one of them has a primary sort of channel or media, social media that they go to. So when it comes to B2B buyer in your segment, I'm assuming you're trying to reach out to decision maker. Do you see age and gender skew and social media skew in a certain way, or are they all over?
Well, in our space, we only post on LinkedIn. Now, we do post on Instagram these days because there are some limitations. Me predominantly, I have a lot of followers as well. And so the way we look at it is that LinkedIn is where we want to live. And it's twofold, right? So SDRs who are looking for jobs that we want to hire and find, they're there. So we're always constantly recruiting for our staff. And we had 4,200 SDRs apply to our company last year, and we didn't spend one dime on job boards. It was all through LinkedIn, organic outreach. And we hired 2%, by the way. So that gives us an opportunity to have a hiring method. And then from the B2B side and from our client side, all of our partners, which Amelia is one of them. She's awesome, by the way. And our CEOs and CROs are there as well, looking for insights and information about how to scale and grow their business. And hopefully they see us in their feed one day. So that's what we look at.
That's pretty amazing. So do you have a structure in your team? Do you have a social media marketing team that strategizes with SDRs, or they're all on their own? Like, how does it work out?
Yeah. So this is a new initiative. When I took over as CEO 3.5 years ago from COO, I, said, we need to make a splash on LinkedIn. We've always been a bespoke agency, always behind the scenes. Cause again, back to Alley-Oop, our clients are the ones that we represent. No one knows it's us. It's our clients. So when we make a call on behalf of, let's say, ZoomInfo, they think it's ZoomInfo. But on the other side of the house is we wanted to make a big splash. So we did partner with an agency. And after a year of doing so, we actually acquired the agency. And now we have an in-house team doing it all with us and for us. So we have videographers on full time. We have copywriters on full time. We have digital marketing media. And now we are running podcasts. So we're doing it all in-house these days. But we did exactly what we tell our clients to do with sales development is, hey, we worked with an agency and then we brought it in-house once we knew how to do it ourselves.
That's pretty cool. So do you offer those services to clients also, or those are captive, like the marketing capabilities?
We reserve it for our founder-led sales. And yes, we do, but it's really designed for those founder-led sales companies who really are trying to make their mark. We're not doing it at a level where we're a marketing agency or a digital marketing or a content company. But for those clients who need a lift and we're noticing that the appointments from cold calling isn't sticking, then we do offer some sort of content creation. Absolutely.
So, when you think about 10 years ago, from a calling perspective, we used to have an agency and we used to do a lot of demand gen. We had a team in Utah and trying to drive basically leads for partners, funded by the brand. And there are two basic tactics we had. One was email and then call based on click open rates, right? And click through rates. And then basically there are basic metrics. You make 100 calls, you make 18% contact and such, they flow through the funnel, you schedule, right? The drill. Mm-hmm. How is it today?
Yeah. Well, you can't do that anymore. We actually shut off click open rates for all of our campaigns. The laws and the rules and regulations and the filters that Google and Microsoft have put into place prevent that from being something that should, look good. It prevents the organic look of a automated email. And so we shut all those off so we can have higher deliverability. And then we focus 100% of our attention, again, LinkedIn, seeing which I like better, right? Because they can see you can see if they looked at your profile. So if someone looked at your profile and they're a prospect of ours, my first response is, hey, I send them a note. I make sure I'm following them. I make sure they're following me back. And then I let one of my SDRs reach out to them directly with a phone call and leverage some content that I've created. So we have kind of taken email into social, and still with the phone piece, we haven't changed that. And that's our secret sauce right now.
And what about the tech stack, Gabe? Like when you think about previously, it was essentially email and a dialer and a CRM. Like how does your tech stack look like today?
Yeah, so dialers have evolved dramatically, right? So before it was a dialer like InsideSales.com was our dialer back 10 years ago. Then actually Orem started doing power and parallel dialing. And they came to us when they were called DialBot. And we were the company that built their SDR team. So their first SDRs for an SDR dialer was us. And I remember building that team and starting that off. And many of the people who currently run that team now left us and go work at Orem. But tools like Orem and Nooks and Concert and FrontSpin are all dialers that have AI built into it that allow for some significant volume as well as high level targeting that we would never have thought was possible many years ago when we were literally picking up the phone. So that has evolved in a big way.
And do they also integrate social media into their platform?
They don't do social. Some of them are starting to. They're actually starting to add workflows in LinkedIn built in the sequencing tool that offsets the call. I believe they're better tools that you can do with social standalone and let the dialer be the dialer. Because that's when you start getting tasks starting to build up, right? When Outreach came out, which we built their team too, Outreach is, if we all used it before, it's a great company. I'll be at their conference next week. But what I will tell you is that, it's that bottleneck of tasks. So we try to separate the channels so we can operate without getting it bottlenecked. And that's what we're doing.
And from a metrics perspective, as I was alluding to 10 years ago, it was like number of emails you sent out, you still had to have an ICP, but then open rates, click-through rates, you will do some sort of a lead score before somebody, called, and then you have touch rate, conversion rate, pipeline rate, all those things, right? So what are the core metrics are you looking at today with this new form of engagement?
Yeah, well, to keep it to just the phone, because that's a big question. I don't want to take too much time, but with the phone itself, we're looking at obviously activity numbers. How many people are we calling? We're not a company that, cares much about the amount of dials because frankly, if the connection rates aren't there, it doesn't really matter anyway. but it is obviously the first part of the funnel. So we look at how many calls we have to how many connections we currently have. And we score the calls before we call them to try to get as high of a connection rate as possible. And there's actually tools that do that for you. And then we want to see, okay, out of that, how many conversations are we having that last longer than a minute? Because we find that to be valuable. And then from there, how many are we converting into an appointment or a lead? And we're not an agency like almost everyone out there that just books appointments. We are working with companies that are founder led. They're looking for product market fit. They're looking for investment. They're looking for, data and information. They're looking for new features or what we should be doing with our competitors. And so we're actually recording those calls and looking at the entire conversation and providing value as well, not just booked pipeline. So we score those leads in various buckets and we provide all of that data to our client, and they can use even the bad things, which we would think is a no. We're using that as value to bring to the client so they can make decisions.
That's fascinating. So talk to us a little bit. We use conversational intelligence quite a bit in our sales funnel for product management to go in, both win and loss analysis wise, to figure out, then pitch improvement, all the things that Gong, kind of provides and other tools provide. So how is CI playing role in this sort of pre-funnel area, which is what I'm hearing from you is largely social, highly influenced by the personalities targeted to the personas. And then you have a stage-based process. You're sifting through a different set of metrics. I didn't hear this before from anybody, which is amazing. Then what happens with the intelligence that you gather? How do you sift it through? Because there's a large volume of it and a lot of depth to it. It's not just getting to an appointment.
Yeah. Well, there's two things to unpack there, and I'll take one at a time. The first one I think is just training and tools and conversational intelligence to provide better reps, right? There's companies like Brevity, which was a client we started with. There's obviously Gong, their head of sales development started working here and moved to Gong. And then there's a company called Itero, which some founders from Orem left and actually started this new company. And that's more focused for SDRs. Nooks has a great AI agent right now for training. And so there's tools that allow our reps to be more effective and really saves management time and training time because they can use AI to get better, right? Role playing, scoring, what's not working. So we can take that conversational intelligence and also turn it into data for our clients and reports so they can hear, okay, what does this no actually mean? Yes, we can use it to help the rep get better at handling an objection, but maybe it's not an objection. Maybe it's a no for a specific reason that we can share with that. So we provide reports with AI text, and actually all of our calls are recorded, and we share that in the form of dashboards.
So then, Gib, do you see, because you're at the forefront of it, to me seems like if they kind of play this movie out in phases, like the first one is, it was all about dials. Then email came about. Along with that, it became multi-touch based on email and calls. Then it truly became multi-touch, email, social, and call. Now what I'm hearing is email really doesn't matter in the front end. It's more of a follow-up tool. So are we kind of moving from this notion of sales development rep to more engagement development rep? And the metrics is, am I engaging my prospects with the brand and then let them call me when they're ready? Like, where do you think this is going?
Yeah, I think intent and signals is where it's all going, right? And then relevancy and personalization from an AI's perspective is where it's all going. There's a step in there when you're taking us through the timeline where it was email and then email automation, like Pardot and Marketo came out. So it went from email to automation. And anytime you put the word automation in front of outbound, it starts blending into spam, right? So if you're just spamming people and that's your go-to-market strategy, that is not where it's going to be going for you successfully in the next few years. It's all about relevancy. It's all about personalization. And I'm not talking, hey, I saw you went to the University of Hartford, by the way, buy my CRM. Like we get those emails all the time. I'm talking hyper relevancy, and it's based on signals, and we can track that through social. We can track that through phone conversations. We can track that through website buyer ID and understanding why that person is on our website and who they are specifically, and should I reach out to them? So that's where I see big data companies going, is all about how do we use AI? How do we use conversations and engagement to really, again, be like a crystal ball as much as we possibly can So we're reaching out to the people at the right time for the right reason.
So can you please double click on the word signal? Like
Yeah.
what was it before? What is
Yeah.
it now? And where do you think it's going? And maybe you can talk a little bit about platform process and people wise, how it is evolving.
Yeah, I mean, I think Signal, to your point, our first signal was, hey, someone clicked on an email and then, or someone opened an email. We thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Oh my God, someone opened an email. Call everyone who opened up emails. And that was like signal number one, right? And it's obviously gotten more and more and more and more intuitive. You know, Bombora and ZoomInfo and Sales Intel and these data providers provide a lot of intent that's happening behind the scenes, whether they're buying companies, investing in companies, hiring people, firing people. That's an intent signal. And then from front of the lines SDR, again, if someone is physically saying, I'm interested, but not right now, a lot of people don't even pass that off to a buyer or a client. We do and say, this is a warm lead. This is someone who says they're interested, but just because they said no to an appointment tomorrow doesn't mean that's not valuable. I'll give you a case in point. We saw a signal on LinkedIn that a new CMO was hired at Ingram Micro. They did $70 billion last year. Okay. Our SDR on our home team saw that happen through a signal on LinkedIn through their social engagement. She connected with the new CMO on LinkedIn, sent an article of my newsletter to them and said, hey, I thought this would resonate with you as you're the new CMO. And this is Gabe, my CEO, talking about some go-to-market strategy. Done. Then she called 2 days later and had a conversation. He said, I love it. It makes sense, but let me get my feet underneath me. I just started my new role. We passed that as a lead to our account executive. We didn't sit on that. We passed it to the lead, and then the account executive started building the relationship even further. Again, no meeting occurred. A year later, they signed with us and they're an active client right now. And so a $70 billion company working with us as an agency, why did that happen? All because of signals, social signals.
That's brilliant. So talk to us a little bit about sort of your own interpretation of what Amelia said, that there are 5 generations showing up. And when you look at the Gen Z, it is not a LinkedIn crowd. Right. It is an Insta crowd. It may be even a TikTok crowd. I mean, they go to LinkedIn and some of them are trying to build their own influencer brand. And we know a lot of the research in B2B space are being handed down to those folks that they're taking it up to the decision maker, right? So the context is now being set by these folks that do not go to LinkedIn, but go to these other channels. So in a sales development world, right, with or without dial, how do you address that shift?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I think people are getting the memo. And what I mean by that is people are getting the memo that LinkedIn is not an online virtual resume like we all looked at it for years and years and years. People are posting in that new generation on LinkedIn significantly more than they have. And I'm talking within the last 24 months. Now, if you look at someone like Sarah Uy, who was an SDR at my competitor, Pareto, she has over 100,000 followers on TikTok. And she posts videos all day, every day about her making cold calls on TikTok. Now, they also blend across other social platforms, including LinkedIn. She has like 80,000 followers on LinkedIn. And she did all of this as an SDR. Now she just left and started her own business and is literally working with the biggest executive teams in the world, help in coming in and training how to be a social influencer on Instagram, on TikTok. And that's what she's teaching and coaching in a B2B space. So I think there is a lot of room there on Instagram and TikTok to blend into social and B2B for sure. Look at Jeremy Miner. He has 1 million followers on Instagram right now, and he has the largest B2B, training company out there in many, many cases. So there's a lot of room for there to be on those social platforms, but I do feel LinkedIn is absolutely catching up in a big, big way.
So let me ask you that, precious word called training, right? Sales training has always been an elusive goal because, there's been a lot of structure. There's been a lot of boot camps and there's tied to QBRs post every time there are launches. What do you think if we come to the people side of things, because you talked a little bit about the platforms and the process, what has changed and what is changing? And are you recruiting different kind of people today than you did 10 years ago? Or you're recruiting the same kind, training them differently? Can you talk a little bit about the enablement piece in this pre-sales stage?
Yeah, we are. We are not hiring the former bartenders and people who used to work at the Gap to join an SDR team. And we're not doing that anymore. Now, many still do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But we have the ability where if you go on LinkedIn and you do a search for BDR, SDR and determine how many people are on the platform, there's over 2 million of them with that title right now. So we are in a world where we don't actually hire anyone that has not done this role at least for a year. Now, on the flip side, we don't want to hire people that have been doing it for more than 6 years or 5 years because frankly, there may be a problem there or they're untrainable, right? So we want someone who is not afraid to pick up the phone and knows how to get punched in the face with negativity and rejection 8 times out of 10. But we want them coachable and willing to learn how we do what we do. And so from a training perspective, that's how we hire. And then to answer the second piece of your question, there is a lot of training out there. And I feel like when you look at trainers, they're usually there because they have an agenda, right? Cold calling is dead. If that's your tagline and your hook on your LinkedIn profile, with all due respect, you're probably going to sell me a book why emailing is your new tool or whatever that is. No offense to anyone who does that. But at the end of the day, I think when you look at training, you have to look at what they actually do and are they walking the walk or have walked it recently to bring someone into my team to train them how to do what we do.
So when you take that, change in approach in hiring and training, what is a typical ramp cycle? Let's say you found the ideal candidate. I'd love to kind of have you talk about who the ideal person is,
Sure.
independent of age, gender, any of those things, but experience wise that you're talking about between 1 to 6 years of doing this. Someone may have been an engineer, now wants to be a BDR, but have those 1 to 6 year range. That's fine. Right. So, but walk us through what is that profile of that individual? And then what does enablement look like and when they are ready to hit the floor and perform?
Yeah. So we call it Gabe's Gauntlet. I didn't come up with the name. It's the name of my newsletter. My marketing team came up with it. And it was from the fact that everyone who gets hired here has to do a final interview with me. And I have them go through a role play of a cold call. And I'm not a nice prospect. And if they can get past that, then they have a shot to get started. Right. And like I said, we only hired 2% of the candidates we looked at last year. With all of those, the number one thing we look for, and it's one word, is grit. That's what we care about most when it comes to coming in the doors. Now, 3 other words that we look at are consistency, coachability, and confidence. If you can have those without grit, you're not going to work here. If you have grit and you have those, or at least on the right track to get some of those, then you have a great shot. One of our best SDRs right now on our sales floor has 9 grandkids, right? And the one next to that, the person number 2, right, literally is 22 years old. And we have everyone in between. So the way we look at it is, do you have grit? Do you have tenacity? Do you have resilience? And are you coachable? And we need you to be tech savvy as well. What we just talked about the last 30 minutes, there's a lot of technology and enablement into this space. And if you're not the person your family calls up when they have a problem with your iPhone, then you may not be the right person for the job. But those literally are questions I ask in the interview process.
So I understand, coachability, competency, and confidence. You possibly get a sense during the interview process.
Sure.
But how do you get a sense on grit?
Yeah. Tell me a story about a time that everything wasn't going your way personally or professionally and how you followed through and did the hard things to get to the other side. That would be a question I would ask.
Do you think people are coming in way GPT trained to answer those things? They upload their life story and GPT tells them how to position and they're practicing. Do you see some of that happening today?
Frankly, I think that's a great example of grit. I mean, I think it's ingenuity and grit put together, right? Another thing is I want to know, or do they know about what we do? And I actually, in my interviews, I have them ask me more questions than I ask them. And those questions they're asking me tells me a lot about their ability to potentially ask questions to prospects, because that's literally the job of the SDR. So I'm judging their ability to ask me questions than I judge my ability to ask them or their response to mine.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and cut this clip and just post it saying, get a job with Gabe, do these 4 things.
I love it.
And let's see how many people call you and get through you, right? That'll be a great way of testing their own grit and the other three dimensions that you talked about. That's beautiful. So let's build on the last one, right? Because I want to go back to the tech stack, right? Because that's kind of changing everything. So on the AI side, right? Let's say if you're restarting today, because all of us that have been in business for a while, we have an infrastructure, we just can't get rid of it and start new. But let's say if you didn't have anything, but you have all your wisdom, you all have your crystal ball vision, you have to build an infrastructure. Walk us through a tech stack that you think you will pull together that you think would be the best in class.
Oh no, it's going to upset some of my vendors. So, I would listen. A lot of people who know me and see what I post online every day would think that I'm not AI fan, which is not true, right? Because I'm in the people business and I believe people should be on the other end when you're having an articulate discussion about an enterprise decision, right? But at the end of the day, I also feel that if you can use AI first before every single thing that you think about when it comes to building out your business, that's the way you should be doing it. So what can we do from an AI perspective and that's our first look at everything. And then for some reason, if we can't do it with AI right now, then let's do it with people, and let's do it with the best people we possibly can, with the partners and vendors we possibly can. So I do believe in power dialing and parallel dialing at a very subscribed recipe. Some people are just, again, putting contacts into a parallel dialer and spamming and spraying and praying. That is not the way to do it, right? You have to, just because the tool allows you to do that doesn't mean you should be using it that way. I think that's an abuse to the market. But I do believe in the tool as long as we enable that tool correctly at the right stages in the prospecting. So there's a lot of nuance there to unpack, but there's a lot of vendors and cool tools right now that I would be absolutely gravitating to. And if you reach out, I can tell you my secret stack.
So let's build on that, because let's build on that. What I'd love to do is kind of brainstorm with you. You and I are starting a company, a tech stack company for the new world, right?
Okay.
And we get to control social media. We get to control website. We get to control all the analytics that I need to see. We get to build our power dialer. We build our own CRM, and we build our own follow-up sequencing tied to that, and remarketing over a period of a year tied to that $70 billion Ingram example that you did. Walk us through in this ideal platform, fully end to end, in that journey, what are the 2 or 3 things that you need in each step that if you and I build this thing together, that will hit it out of the park?
Yeah. I mean, I actually am weird because I would say I wouldn't even have a website. And if I did have a website, I would take Adam Robinson's from RB2B's note and make it the ugliest website in the history of the world. Why? Because it gets attention. Right? Anything that could get you the right attention was the way I would do it. So from a website perspective, I would literally use that as a way to just grab people's attention, whether it's making it really ugly or making it themed to make people laugh or just have fun with it, because people need to be realizing that we're all just people and not to be as professional. And then we would build it all through social and communities and partners. And that's how I would do it, because it gives social proof. It gives the ability for us to really have dialogue and conversations. I would be in, Slack communities and in, if you will, the dark web of business to business, and be communicating with people and having conversations, and then be posting a ton of video and a ton of video in regards to that. So whatever it is that you will be building from a product perspective, you need to build a media company with it. You need to have a media business within your company, even if you're selling a widget. And that's how I would go to market in the world of social media these days.
That is amazing. And from a platform perspective, do you think there is a platform out there today or 2 or 3 things that can support that? Or do you think somebody needs to build that end to end?
Not an all-in-one. I know there's a lot of companies who are trying to build, go-to-market studios and bringing everything together. And no. I haven't seen anything out there that is an all-in-one tool, but I would love to see something like that, because it would be great. And I also think there's a lot of opportunity in agencies, right? The word fractional is really just the word consultant. But again, if you did a search on LinkedIn, there's about 60,000 fractional CROs and about 70,000 fractional CMOs right now. And there's a resurgence of fractional work, and leveraging the ability to get into those markets with partnerships, with referrals, and with enabling them from more of an agency. They're just a small agency, and enabling them with tools to help them build their business and agency is the way to go. That's the new franchising these days, is fractional work.
So I heard three nuggets. I think they're big nuggets, and maybe they're diamonds. One is communities. Second, you said partners. And third, you used the word dark web. I had a podcast with Danny Jenkins yesterday. He's CEO, CTO, founder of ThreatLocker. And he was talking about this whole dark web people are, where trading your personal information and ransomware, build ransomware, go attack people, take stuff away, right? That was from the security side. So talk to us in the business side, because the first time I've heard, a business leader talk about marketing in the dark web. So, but you're talking about marketing with the good guys, not to the bad guys. So how do you reach people in the dark web?
Yeah, and I guess my role is not from a security or a threatening standpoint, more of it's offline, right? These Slack communities, with CEOs and VPs of sales and colleagues is really where the magic is happening and those referrals are happening. I'll give you an example. We've built a network of over 450 fractional CROs that we've built our own community, and we can provide them an opportunity to have us execute their go-to-market strategy from an SDR perspective and enable them to provide services on their behalf to their clients. But we are their execution partner under their brand. We built that, and right now it's 30% of our new business is coming from that community that we've built, but it's nowhere to be found. That community, you don't see it on the internet. That community doesn't have a website. That community doesn't have a group or a LinkedIn group of any kind. It is just a offline network of 450 fractional leaders. And so that's what I mean by that.
So, Danny Jenkins from, again, ThreatLocker yesterday, they said, there are about 500 people. They do 850 physical events. He's got a team of 100 plus running those events. And these events are 40 to 50 people coming in worldwide. He himself has traveled through 5 countries. He possibly, talked about 8 or 10 cities, working with his team, being in front, getting the word out, right? So that's sort of the in-person. And then he also talked about the dark web stuff. So if I take the sort of the buyer's journey, right, in a classic way, this awareness, interest, trial, purchase, renewal, upgrade, advocacy, right? What I'm hearing from you is that the awareness piece, maybe search is still there, generative AI is still there, but interest, they're going to these dark web channels to validate before they talk to somebody. And then the advocacy of the install base of customers possibly are in some of those channels, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm in the channels where I see my own company being asked if it's something they should do, and it's like, oh my God, right? So like I'm in a channel with CEOs, I'm in a channel with CROs as me being in the channel because I'm a part of the network. But then a CEO says, hey, I just was introduced to this company, Alley-Oop. I'm looking to build an SDR team in-house or work with a company to do it for me. What do you guys think? And there's like 1,000 people in the group. And I'm in the group. And so, those are funny things that happen. But yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like those are the places. Again, it's more of social validation because social media, specifically LinkedIn has been very marketing billboardy and everything's a pitch. And that's why I believe like, don't be pitchy. I have a kind of a rule where I don't even mention the name of my company, but maybe 1 out of every 10 posts. Because I don't want people thinking I'm just pitching people all day long. We want to build a authentic conversation, even online, but within those communities and those Slack channels, that is, the feeling every single time. Like this is true, authentic responses, and they feel much more comfortable and less, I guess, afraid to say their opinion about whatever it is they're thinking about.
So Gabe, how do you get into those channels?
Oh, you need a secret password, right? It's like the speakeasy. You got to knock on it a few times. You get invited. Frankly, I get to get invited to it. We meet and have conversations. I do a podcast like this with you. And, maybe after this call, you may say, hey, I'm actually in one of those channels. I'd love to invite you. Like that's literally how it happens. I don't look for it. I don't try to find it because you won't. And you just get invited. You meet with people, you network, and you just get to have conversations. And usually you find yourself being asked to join because value, is being brought and they think you can provide some.
How effective are LinkedIn groups today? Are they Any effective?
I think they're effective. I think again, you got to be very clear about who you let in, right? If you're an admin of one, you just want to make sure you're not bringing people in and just start reposting and reposting and reposting and going back to that just ads and spam cannon and just reposting billboards of material. I think the ones that are niche and the ones that are very, 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 very specific are the ones you get the most amount of information. And that's the ones that I try to get into. But the ones that are just big or having a lot of just repurposed or, content, it just doesn't, it's just a waste.
Wow, this has been a fascinating conversation, Gabe. Is that I had no idea that the sales development part of it has evolved into such a complex set of tasks and orchestration and technology and people selection. So it's been an amazing journey. Thank you for being here. I'd love to have you back and see where things are, maybe 6 months from now, because things are changing so fast. But this has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.